Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I am so excited to be talking with my guest today. We just had the most fabulous pre-chat. You know, I always say we should hit record at the very start because that's where the true gems and, the really interesting things appear, but we'll probably repeat some of them. But please join me in welcoming the fabulous Michael Silva to our program today. Welcome, Michael. How are you doing this morning?
I am doing wonderful, Deb. Thanks for having me. And like I said, pre-record, I love your energy, and I'm hoping to be able to match that energy throughout this whole hour.
We will. Now I do have to say, I think you might be my first guest in these thousand some programs from Rhode Island.
Representing little Rhodey. There's not many of us here.
I know, that's it. Percentage wise, I'm doing pretty good now, right?
Yeah, you just hit 1/1000th of all the population of Rhode Island.
I know. I love it. Well, let me tell folks a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this. So Michael Silva was the president and founder of FOUNDATIONperformance Sports Medicine for 20 years before selling his practice and exiting successfully. They were a leading outpatient physical therapy practice in New England with 3 offices in 2 states. He is also the creator of RUNstrong, a comprehensive conditioning program for runners and coaches. After exiting the clinical setting, Michael's mission is to be a resource to small business owners and entrepreneurs. Helping them thrive optimally in business is his mission. He knows that a good business is built on relationships and self-awareness, and that business will succeed when the customer experience is optimized. He is committed to helping his clients not only meet personal and business goals, but to surpass them. So again, Michael, welcome.
Thank you.
We really are going to have such a great chat today.
Yes.
You did have quite the interesting career. So tell us really more about how it is that you got to where you are today.
Wow. How much time do I have?
Well, it is the Business Power Hour.
All right. I'll keep this down to 59 minutes. So
okay. Sounds good.
So I became a physical therapist in 1999. And I decided to become a physical therapist because I was a high school athlete who was hurt a lot. And I spent a lot of time in physical therapy. And I was like, I like to work out. I like to talk. I like to not wear a suit and tie to work. So this might be kind of fun. So I got into it. I met my wife in graduate school. We got married soon after graduate school. And I started working for a big corporate healthcare company. And I did not like it. So
because that was close to a suit.
That was close to a suit. And also I was one of, at that time, 250,000 employees or something insane.
Whoa.
It was the biggest healthcare company in the world at the time. I don't know if you remember Health South.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So I don't think there are many around anymore, at least not up here. So, they were trying to do good things. I was just a number, not happy.
Right.
So then I went to a smaller private practice owned that was privately owned by a gentleman who had about 5 or 6 offices, and a great guy, but it was a clientele I wasn't really passionate about seeing. And I went through like this depression. I was like, I just spent all this money, went through all these years of training, and I don't like what I do. Yeah, it was not a good feeling. So I know, I think I was already experiencing burnout. Burnout wasn't a term back then. It's very popular now, especially in our profession. So anyway, I started looking for jobs outside of healthcare, and I got offered a position to be a medical device salesperson for one of the biggest medical device companies in the world. I was this close to taking it. And then my wife and I had a long talk, and I realized I think she said, you're the captain of your own rowboat. You're not the deckhand on someone else's yacht. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then I also realized I liked being a therapist. I just didn't like how it was being done where I was.
Right.
And who I was working with. So at that point, you remember the Field of Dreams movie?
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
tagline, if you build it, they will
Yep.
come.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did. So
Mm-hmm.
right around 2001, I started like my side hustle and building my
Mm-hmm.
practice. And in 2003, May of 2003, I
Mm-hmm.
turned 30. I had my first child,
Mm-hmm.
and I became fully responsible for the financial health of my family. Because just right,
Wow.
yeah, right on my own. And I
Mm-hmm.
looked at my wife and I was like, if I don't grow up now, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, let's do this,
And
right?
she didn't want two children. So,
No.
mm-hmm.
Excuse me. So, yeah, so we started what turned out to be Foundation Performance.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 20 years of, it was like a blurry growth. We did really well. During that time, I had two children during that time. My wife was home with the kids as much as
Mm-hmm.
she could be, and then came into the business. Um, I grew this business. I was about to open my fourth office when I
Mm-hmm.
sold. So I had the three up and running.
Mm-hmm.
And I found this niche in the running world.
Mm-hmm.
I was not a distance runner, but I
Mm-hmm.
ended up doing well with
Mm-hmm.
runners. And my practice, I call it, was the practice that the runner built.
Mm-hmm.
And we probably saw more runners than any practice I know
Mm-hmm.
of. So it was fun because it's a motivated
Mm-hmm.
customer base, and we had
Right. They want to get well quickly.
they do,
Mm-hmm.
and loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had many therapists who worked with me over the years and said, "You have the best patients in the world."
Mm-hmm.
We had a very low cancellation and no-show rate, which
Mm-hmm.
indicated either one of two things, and I think it was both. We're really providing value to our
Mm-hmm. Right.
clients. Well, we have really good motivated clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
those two things combined, we had arguably the lowest cancellation rate
Mm-hmm.
out of any clinic I've ever
Mm-hmm.
known. And I know this now as
Mm-hmm.
I'm consulting and coaching and working with clinics. We had the lowest cancellation rate I ever
Mm-hmm.
heard of.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I pat myself and my team on the back for that, but it was
Mm-hmm.
also just the customer experience that we
Mm-hmm.
provided for this group of motivated
Mm-hmm.
individuals. So it was fun. It was a blur.
Mm-hmm.
Going through the pandemic was rough as it was for probably so many of the guests you've had
Mm-hmm.
on here, for all of us,
Mm-hmm.
right? Lost my father around that
Mm-hmm.
time, had some other, life events that were
Mm-hmm.
going on. So there were many things that just point me in the direction that it's time for me to move on and take a
Mm-hmm.
different direction. So I sold the business at the end of 2021. I worked with a company that bought mine for about a year through the
Mm-hmm.
transition.
Okay.
And I wish them the best, and they're trying to do great things, but I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to move on and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
do something different. So I took some time off. I reshingled my house. I became a handyman in my
Mm-hmm.
in my home, and just really thought about what I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
do. And through conversations with my wife, she said, "You know what? You've been doing this a long time. You've learned some things."
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "You like helping. You like
Mm-hmm.
teaching. Why don't you just help others do what you did?"
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I started my coaching and consulting business,
Mm-hmm.
and I absolutely love it
Mm-hmm.
because I'm helping people avoid costly mistakes that I
Mm-hmm.
made. I'm also helping them make decisions so they can enjoy, thrive, and find value in their
Mm-hmm.
business. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not an easy business, especially in healthcare, private practice. It's not. It's a grind. It can
Mm-hmm.
be, but you can
Right.
really enjoy it. And by making
Mm-hmm.
strategic decisions early on, you
Mm-hmm.
can set yourself up for a wonderful career.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are.
I love it. I love it. Well, it did make me curious. In your bio, we mentioned that you had three offices in two states. You were, the person in charge.
Mhm.
Did it mean that you had become a suit, or were you still seeing patients and really enjoying that?
I was still seeing patients, and
Okay.
I enjoyed it. I probably,
Mm-hmm.
according to like, I had a business consultant when we first started growing because I didn't know what I was doing, and it was
Mm-hmm.
extremely helpful. But even with her advice and some of the other advice I got, that like, you need to back out a little bit because you need to
Mm-hmm.
work on the business
You
more.
need to be the suit.
Right. And I refused to do
Mm-hmm.
that because I really enjoyed my
Mm-hmm.
clinical career. And I was working with a lot of Olympic and
Mm-hmm.
professional runners at that
Mm-hmm.
time. So, being a young male, it filled my ego. Right.
Yeah, true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I can admit it now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I had like some of the best runners in the
Mm-hmm.
work seeking my care. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, why am I not going to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I
Mm-hmm.
was the man. And
Right. And you knew you were helping them.
I was, yeah. And I had built such a good team.
Mm-hmm.
And with my wife she was in and out of the business depending on
Mm-hmm.
how old our kids were.
Mm-hmm.
But in the background, she was very supportive. And then when
Mm-hmm.
she came in, I had her help as well. And then we
Mm-hmm.
empowered managers. So
Mm-hmm.
I was able to still
Mm-hmm.
lead.
Mm-hmm.
And my clinical hours got less over the
Mm-hmm.
years.
Right.
But I was still able to like
Mm-hmm.
feed my passion of
Mm-hmm.
being a clinician
Mm-hmm.
and running the business at the same time. It was a hard balance.
Right. But I love that because, that's one of the things that I hear the most from small business owners or, even larger business owners. But they say, we got into doing X because we loved it. It was our passion. But now I have to do the bookkeeping. I have to do the hiring. I have to do the sales. And I never get to do what it is that I loved.
Right.
And, and so then, that comes back to that word that you mentioned before, burnout.
Right.
They didn't get into it to be the leader of the business.
No. You know what I learned too? So yes, I went through that whole like personality struggle. Like, do I want to do this to enjoy it? I got advice early on, hire people to do things you don't want to do or you're not good at. So, I had a lawyer, had an accountant, had a bookkeeper, had a cleaner, had all those people. So I didn't have to do those things. But also what I realized is that same sentiment we need to talk about when we elevate people to like a managerial role. What happens in most clinics is they take their best PT who's clinically, has a waiting list and everyone wants to be on their schedule and they're doing great and promote them to manager.
Right.
Most of them
And
don't
have
wanna
them
be.
no longer dealing with patients.
Right. And that's where their superpower is. And most of them don't really want it, but in our field, it's hard to make more money just seeing patients
Right.
because our reimbursement was getting cut.
Mm-hmm.
They want to get paid more, which they should because they're giving lots of
Right.
years of
But
service.
there's only X number of hours in their day.
Right. And a lot of them get elevated and then they get burnt out because they don't want to worry about KPIs and numbers and marketing. They want to just treat
hiring and firing and
right. Right. So I give that advice a lot of times with my clients. And when I'm speaking, like, don't just take your best clinician and promote them. Like, make sure you connect with them and make sure they want to do it. Because you put someone in a position they don't want to do, that's just a recipe for disaster, right? And I've known some amazing human beings, great clinicians that have no desire to make more money and work their way up the corporate ladder and become a suit. They're like, I want to wear my khakis and t-shirts and sneakers. I want to treat patients. I want to just make a good living to support my family, and I want to help as many people as I can. And that's awesome that they knew that, and hopefully their employers know that.
Right. Well, and to have that awareness, and then to actually act on it, and not have those pressures. It was interesting. I was talking with someone just the other day who said, that she loved what she was doing, and an opening at a little higher level came up, and her boss came to her and said, I want you in that job. And she said, I thought about it. And she said she was very honored that they said that. And she turned them down. But we were talking about it because she told me, she said, did she just shoot her career in the foot? And are they always going to remember that and say, hey, when it was offered to you, you didn't take it. So we're not going to make that offer again. Right. And that worried her. And I think that is one of the things is, that you have to be firm in why you want to stay at that level.
Right. And I think that the manager or employer owner at that point, I would congratulate that person. Right. Because, okay, I was going to put you in a position that you weren't really wanting. And that would have just taken away job satisfaction. It would have taken away the positive energy she's bringing to the role. It just, like I said before, it would have been a disaster. So I would hope that, the higher ups and the suits at that position would say, you know what, I get it. This is not what part of your future plan. I can't force it into you. Thank you. Let's, do you have someone else you would recommend? Like empower this person to help find the right person for that role because not everyone wants that.
Right. Well, and then things change too. Later on, they might decide, you know what, okay, now I am ready to move up that corporate ladder. And so, yeah, I tell you, that's part of the reason why I think a lot of us go off and start our own businesses, right? Because we don't want to have to make those decisions. Right. But then it happens exactly the way it happened with you. Your business that you loved grew, and then you had to make those decisions no matter what.
Right. And I was really nervous at that time, which is why I hired the business consultant, because all of a sudden I've got more clients than I can handle. I'm trying to hire people. I didn't hire smartly. I just hired anyone with a heartbeat that wanted to work for me, right? I just need people. I need people. Right. Then I had to fire people and that whole nightmare. But I really enjoyed it. I realized that I love mentoring, creating the culture in the business, helping people be better versions of themselves, whether just as humans or as, valuable members of my team. I loved running meetings. I loved all that stuff. So I really enjoyed it, but I still loved excuse me, the clinical side.
Hmm.
So keeping that
Right.
balance,
Hmm.
for me, it kept my energy high and I
Hmm.
was able to balance that
Hmm.
out. So it was a welcome change for me.
Hmm.
I really enjoyed it.
Hmm. Right. Well, and by still keeping your hand in the clinical aspects, you could see, things were changing, what's new, all of those things. And sure, you could see those as the manager, but it truly is a hands-on for you.
Right. Yeah. And healthcare has changed.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, I don't know how deep you want to get into healthcare, but it is when I started, there were very little copays.
Hmm. Hmm.
So back in the 90s, the average copay was maybe probably $10.
Right. Hmm.
There was no deductibles weren't really a big
Right.
thing.
Well, yeah, and especially for things like PT.
Right. And we
Hmm.
we could, and I think we're paying the price for this, but
Hmm.
clinics at that time could do whatever they wanted
Hmm.
as long as
Right.
they excuse me, as long as they wanted.
Hmm.
So there was an overutilization of our
Hmm.
services.
Hmm.
So then the insurance company is like, hey, we don't want to just keep paying out
Right.
money if not
You
needed. So
get
then
10 visits.
right. And then
Hmm.
copays went up,
Hmm.
deductibles went up.
Hmm.
Now I remember I had people come in and paying $75 out of pocket for their visit, and that's with insurance coverage because
Hmm.
they had high deductibles.
Hmm. Hmm.
They chose a higher deductible plan, so
Right.
it all
Hmm.
kind of comes out in the
Hmm.
wash. But
Hmm.
people are spending a lot of
Hmm.
money. And what I started realizing, seeing that transition in
Hmm.
healthcare, is when I became really passionate about the customer
Hmm.
experience.
Hmm.
I started training my staff. I'm like, these our clients are not just
Hmm.
patients anymore. Like they're
Hmm.
high paying customers,
Hmm.
and high paying customers um, demand and deserve
Right.
a unbelievable experience.
Hmm.
Like so it's from the
Hmm.
from the website to the first phone
Hmm.
call to the greeting when they walk in the
Hmm.
door to the care they're going to
Hmm.
receive to the outcomes they get
Hmm.
to the appearance of our clinic. Like
Hmm.
everything has to be top
Hmm.
notch. Because I just put myself in their shoes. Like if I'm
Hmm.
spending $75 a
Hmm.
visit and I have to be here 2 to 3 times a week for
Hmm.
months because I just had a total knee replacement,
Hmm.
I'm spending thousands of
Hmm.
dollars here. You better make it worth
Hmm.
my while because
Right.
I'm a high paying
Hmm.
customer.
Hmm.
So I had that little shift,
Hmm.
I think made me a better business owner and
Hmm.
kind of changed our philosophy as a
Hmm.
company,
Hmm.
but also just kept making it more challenging
Hmm.
because now some people can't afford to
Hmm.
can come in for the amount of visits that they
Right.
really need
Hmm.
because it's expensive. So
Hmm.
how do we strategize that?
Hmm.
And I had an amazing front desk guy, and who became my head administrator and head biller.
Hmm.
Justin, if you're listening, I still love you. Like he was like one of the most valuable employees I ever
Hmm.
had. And he had a quote that I still use to this day. He said, patient care should not be isolated to the treatment rooms in the gym. It
Ah,
starts at the front desk,
right. Hmm.
right? Because we have to
Hmm.
strategize with these
Hmm.
people. If they're like, I
Hmm.
can't afford this, like,
Hmm.
or my deductible resets in a
Hmm.
month, but I need therapy now and I'm going to
Hmm.
spend all this
Hmm.
money and then it's going to reset. So
Hmm.
we had to literally
Hmm.
strategize and have meetings, these financial meetings with our
Hmm.
patients and help guide them to do
Hmm.
what was best for them financially, but
Hmm.
also to help them meet their
Hmm.
goals. It was fun. It
Hmm.
was like a,
Hmm.
like almost like a little detective work
Right.
sometime.
Right.
But it really
Hmm.
shifted as healthcare
Hmm.
changed. We had to shift
Hmm.
our strategies, and I think
Hmm.
that's what made us successful.
Right. And it is that customer experience. And it's funny, the little things that really make the difference. Calling somebody by their first name, because we all know somebody calls you by your first name, that's the sweetest sound, right?
Right.
um and
I
that's a
I I hear you, Deb.
yes, thank you, Bob. You know? And but yeah, if somebody now that's tricky, because especially where you have maybe hundreds of people coming through in a week, how do you remember? Now the nice thing is, for something like physical therapy, they're coming multiple times,
Right.
and so that does kind of give you a leg up on things. But yeah, my oncologist, I mean, I go in every 21 days. I don't check in. The girl at the front desk says, Ms. Creer, I see you, and I go sit down. And then of course everybody's like, how long has she been coming here? Right. um but just that little touch really makes a difference. And then would you like some water? All of those various little things. Most of the time they're going to tell you no, but sometimes they'll say yes. And I know businesses, especially when they're small and starting out, they're like, okay, couple cases of water, oh my gosh, that adds up. But you're going in, you're doing a physical activity, you give me water and I'm going to be a happy camper,
Right.
either before or after. And and the lighting, the ambiance, all of
The
those things.
music, the
Yeah.
colors on the walls,
Yep.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I started, I said one thing I don't want to be is a stuffy medical office because I
Right.
didn't want my clients to feel like
hmm
patients, even though they were,
Right.
right? They're in the
hmm
healthcare practice,
hmm
but
hmm
I wanted to be more thriving,
hmm
more gym and spa like
hmm
than,
hmm
we didn't wear lab coats and it
Right.
wasn't just like stuffy
hmm
pastel typical
hmm
decorations and things like that. But it's all part of that experience.
hmm
And one thing, and I would love your experience because you've been in and out of doctors'
hmm
offices, right? So we had the sliding glass door at the front
hmm
desk. And I used to tell my front desk, I'm like, here's like rule number one
hmm
is you slide that open before the patient gets to the desk.
Yes. hmm
And if you're on the phone, that's okay.
hmm
Acknowledge that you know that
hmm
there's a human in front
hmm
of you. Just think about if you're going into an office, right? And there's
hmm
a person at the front desk and
hmm
they're on the phone with someone and
hmm
their heads down and
hmm
you're standing at the
hmm
glass and they're not even
You're like,
acknowledging that you're there and
hello.
they're doing their
hmm
thing. Yeah,
hmm
even it might feel like minutes, it might only be
hmm
30 seconds, but that
hmm
doesn't feel good.
Right.
Versus if you walk up and I
hmm
go, and I'm on the phone,
hmm
I'll be with you in 1 minute, Deb. Just
Yeah. Or even just smile. Right.
right. Greet them. And I
Yeah.
used
I
to
see they're on the phone. I'm not going to interrupt.
right, right. But
Mhm,
just acknowledging that you're there goes a long way. You might not even be able to put your finger on
mhm.
why that was a good
Right.
interaction,
hmm
but you just felt special.
hmm
Oh, they
hmm
know I'm here.
Right.
They
Right.
acknowledged me. And if
Yeah.
they say your name and they know you
hmm
at that point, great,
hmm
they said your name.
hmm
Um, because if not, and you're sitting there waiting, you're just like, oh, here we
hmm
go.
I'm just another whatever.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love it when I go into a small business, antique store, whatever it is, and they greet you,
hmm
right? Hello. Even just something as simple as that. Now, sometimes
Right.
it drives me nuts. We have a chain of restaurants down here, kind of like Chipotle, but they're called Moe's, right?
Yeah, we have
And you
most up here
walk in
too.
and they all yell, "Welcome to Moe's," and it usually just startles, but it's the same concept with the Walmart greeters, right?
Right,
They are letting you know that they are welcoming you in.
right.
Now, I live in Atlanta, which is the home of Chick-fil-A. And the whole it's been a pleasure to serve you. I mean, that's the other great concept. Yeah, I gave them money, they gave me food, yada yada yada, right? I could have gone next door to McDonald's. I could have gone on the other side and gone to Wendy's.
Right.
So it didn't really matter. But that it's been a pleasure to serve you. And when
Means so
they
much,
put,
doesn't it?
yeah, and when they put the right tone on it, right? It's
Right.
been a pleasure to serve you. It's like, yeah, right.
Sure it is.
It's yeah, and I will joke with them, especially if they don't say it. I will say, was it not your pleasure? And then they're like, because they're thinking, oh my God, she's gonna turn me in.
Right.
But yeah, just those little things
Right.
make a huge
And,
difference.
and and think about it, Deb. Most of these little things don't cost a business a
Right,
penny.
right.
It's just a different
hmm
way of talking,
hmm
communicating,
hmm
make it less transactional.
hmm
And I say this all the time, like you can
hmm
improve your client
hmm
experience with this much
Right.
money.
hmm
Like
hmm
you can literally,
hmm
in that investment in time and
hmm
energy and changing your processes, will return a
hmm
thousand times over,
Right, right.
right? It's not about
hmm
the fancy new
hmm
equipment and all these other
hmm
expenses that you really
hmm
need. It's like, especially in our business,
hmm
it's humans treating humans,
hmm Right.
right? And
hmm
everything is becoming so
hmm
automated these
hmm
days with, the human contact is less and
hmm
less in,
hmm
in in business.
hmm
So we have the opportunity to not only keep that human contact,
hmm
which people need and want, even if
hmm
they don't think or know they
hmm
do. Like we as
Right.
humans need that,
hmm
right?
Right.
That's one of our needs
hmm
is
hmm
connection. So we have the opportunity to do that
hmm
on a customer service level,
hmm
never mind like in the treatment room,
hmm
like we're touching humans,
Right.
we're
hmm
talking about pain, we're
hmm
talking about their life, and we're helping them. So
hmm
that's just like a win.
hmm
That's so we have this opportunity to connect in a way that most
hmm
businesses don't. And
Right. hmm
if you like really wrap your hands around that and really
hmm
optimize what that connection
hmm
means and your team is on board
hmm
with that,
hmm
like,
hmm
you've got patience for life,
Right. Right.
right?
Well, and you mentioned that keyword pain. When people are going into a medical treatment facility, doctor's office, whatever, they're in pain. They're scared. They might be angry. I mean, depending
Yeah,
on what all is going on. And so sometimes, again, that smile, that how are you today? And I tell people, fine is the worst word, right?
right. They're really
And
not.
of course it's habit, right? How you doing today? Fine.
Fine.
And it's okay to tell the Starbucks lady that, but I tell people, don't ever tell your medical treatment people that. Be honest, and you can be saying, I am really fabulous. I tell people hunky dory. They know if I don't say hunky dory, there's a problem.
There's a problem.
But yeah, when you're dealing with people who, same thing goes in, say, maybe a law office or whatever, their emotions are raw. And what can you do to help that?
Right.
And I mean, as marketing people, we're taught solve someone's pain. I've never liked that. I want to say, how can we bring them pleasure? Right.
Right.
But yeah, it's back to those simple things. If I can, if I'm going to sit in a waiting room, and it's really funny, that all of the ones that I go to, and I go to a lot of doctors, HGTV seems to be what they all seem to put on, right? And right. Because that's pretty, it's pretty non-controversial and all sorts of things. But then of course I'm like, wait, no, I was watching that, and in my dentist's office, the first thing they do is they hand me the remote control, and I'm like, I'm not going to be here that long.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. But again, they're making me comfortable.
Right.
And maybe I'm focused on, whatever is going on the TV and not thinking about what's going on to me.
Right. But also, Deb, you're wired. Mm-hmm. There's a select few people, humans on earth, that are wired like you are, where you focus on the positive. Like I felt that through watching some of your previous interviews, and then in our little pre-talk here, it's contagious and it's great. So you're going to be the person who's focusing on giving people more pleasure than taking away pain, even though they're very similar.
Right.
People are motivated by getting out of pain or really increasing the pleasure. Right. But how do you package it? So that's great. And just by you having that conversation in your head, you're going to approach that person differently. Right. And you said something too, like everyone, and I used to tell people, my staff, like everyone who walks in here has a help me sign on their head. Right. And they're in pain. Like they don't want to be here, even though we're really fun and we're cool people.
I don't want to, I want to go for a massage. I don't want to go for physical therapy.
No, and some of the interventions we do are not fun.
They hurt.
We stick needles in people's trigger points, and we mobilize things, and we make them work hard and exercise. So it's not the most pleasurable. It's not a hot stone massage at a local massage parlor. But also they're here for a reason, and we can't take it personal if they come in a little grumpy.
Right.
We have to be the positive change for them. Like we need to not overwhelm them with positivity, but that's
because that's a little weird.
Yeah, and it could be nauseating. It can have a reverse effect. But I used to tell everyone, like, we greet our clients before they greet us. So with the sliding glass, right? If they're walking down the hall, say hi to them, get to know their name, and like a lot of the
eye contact.
Oh my goodness, right? And with us, we used to say, like, high fives, fist bumps, and hugs for everyone, depending on what comfort level you are.
Right.
And I did this for a long time, and a lot of my patients I had early on are now friends of mine. But it's like, I'm hugging, fist bumping, and high fiving people. Like, we need to stay motivated, stay positive. I'm saying hi to people I don't even know, right? Oh, hey, I'm Mike. I'm the owner. I don't know if we ever met. How's your care going? You're in great hands. You've got the best clinician in the house today. Like, just making that, having that talk means so much. Again, and it's free.
Right. And I'm one of those wacky people that when I'm sitting there, I strike up conversations with other people, and especially if I can see that they might have a little discomfort going on. Right. And so, I mean, my doctors have figured that out. They, will call me over to speak with people, but, and like, I've been going for treatment every 21 days for 9 years. Wow. I know the place inside and out, all this stuff. And so I'm like, do you need water? Can I get you some crackers? I hated COVID because I couldn't do that. And the staff always tells me, hey, that's great, because it's, they don't have to do it. And I tell them, well, you're very busy. But if they, most of the time people look at me a little strange, like, what, huh? But who are you? But I also, know, okay, that's, like you said, that's not everybody. Most people are going to go in, they've got their book, they've got their knitting, they're going to nap, they're going to do whatever. And they don't want to be bothered by, the wackadoodle. And so I pick up on that too. Right. But, it's, how can we help those around us, all the way around, even if, again, we're just saying, hi, how are you doing today? Right. As opposed to, right.
Deb, you're talking about this at a human level, not even a business level at this point. you're in a waiting room at an
Hmm.
oncology office. You
Hmm.
know this person next to you is going through similar
Right.
things that you're
They're
going
not there for fun.
Right. So
Hmm.
let's connect, right? And
Hmm.
for some people,
Hmm.
you're not going to get the open arms. For some
Right.
people, you're going to make that
Hmm.
their day and that
Hmm.
whole visit
Hmm.
probably a lot better,
Right.
right?
Right.
And by the way,
Yeah.
how come I'm not surprised that you just approach strangers and say hi and
I know.
right? You're so shy. It's
Yeah,
so
I
weird.
know. I'm just, but it, it really, and it does come back to, how can I help?
Right.
But yeah, one time I was in the treatment room, and this elderly lady was next to me, and she had fallen asleep during her treatment, and she had oxygen tubes in, and her head had turned and the tubes came loose. And so she woke up because she couldn't breathe.
Oh,
And of
geez.
course it alarmed her, and the staff immediately was there and got things going. But I could tell that then she was just kind of not happy. And so I struck up a conversation with her, and I was done. My treatment takes 30 minutes. It takes me longer to drive there. But I, motioned to my nurse, and I had her, she turned the beeping off, but she did not disconnect me. So it looked like I was still getting treatment. And I sat there for probably another hour and just talked with this woman, learned about how she worked at the phone company way back when it was one of the bells, all of these various things. Because in that room, you typically are there by yourself, right? Germs. Bleh.
Right.
And so, and when I could tell that she had, was relaxed again, then, they disconnected me, and away I went. But just, and maybe we were talking about this before the program. We need to get back to simple kindness towards other people.
Oh, geez.
And
Yes.
did it take an hour out of my day? Yeah. What was I going to do with that hour? Sleep. I mean, this was not a big deal for me.
Right.
Now, if I had something I needed to go do, that would have been very different.
Right.
But again, how can we make life better for others? And as a business person, how can we do that?
Right. So kind of on this note, as I started running my business, I approached every customer service transaction, every business I went
Mhm.
into, every store I went into, every restaurant I went into,
Mhm.
and like checked in with myself, like
Mhm.
did that feel good?
Mhm.
Did it go well? Like
Mhm.
how was I greeted? Like
Mhm.
so I learned a lot through these
Mhm.
transactions.
Mhm.
And I became the person who I never really was a complainer, but I wouldn't
Mhm.
complain if someone didn't give me the great service. But when
Mhm.
someone did, and I loved
Right.
doing this because
Mhm.
I would ask them, like if I'm at a restaurant and
Mhm.
the server, I'd say, "Hey, do you mind telling the manager to come over?" And the look of fear,
Yeah, they're like, what
like,
did I
what did I
do?
do wrong?
Mhm.
So the manager would come over and I would have them come with the server
Mhm.
sometimes. They'd be like, I just want to like tell you
Mhm.
in front of
Mhm.
this amazing employee you have, what
Mhm.
a great experience, blah,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. And then
Mhm.
like some people get tears in their eyes
Right.
because
Mhm.
they need to be
Mhm.
celebrated
Mhm.
versus all we do is, pardon my French,
Mhm.
bitch and complain about the
Mhm.
negative. Like, let's
Mhm.
focus on the people who are doing it
Right.
well. Can I
Mhm.
tell you a quick story about this?
Oh, of course.
So I was had the practice at the time, and I went to my local Starbucks after I had lunch to grab my afternoon coffee.
Mhm.
And it was still COVID times. We all had
Mhm.
masks on. Actually, they had masks. We didn't need a mask as a customer at that point. I forget how it all worked out.
Mhm.
But anyway, I go in and I just had gotten the Starbucks app and I'm trying to use it. And I felt like a really old man. I was
Mhm.
messing up. And the girl that was taking my order, she was very sweet. And I'm like,
Mhm.
do you know how I can do this? And she's like, oh, yeah, look, go here. And we spent like 15 minutes
Mhm.
trying to figure out my
Wow.
app. And
Mhm.
the other cashiers or servers were
Mhm.
taking care of the other customers.
Mhm.
But she spent all this time and she was so sweet. And I looked at her, I'm
Mhm.
like, you are very good at your job.
Mhm.
And like she had tears in her eyes.
Oh.
She's
Mhm.
like, this is my first day. I'm so nervous. I'm like, you're doing amazing.
Mhm.
I'm like, just
Mhm.
keep up what you're doing.
Mhm.
Like, I will be back. Like, you made
Mhm.
this an unbelievable
Mhm.
experience. Thank you. Blah blah blah. So then I leave. I go to my office, and
Mhm.
I go out to the waiting room to get my new patient. I had a new
Mhm.
evaluation at the time,
Mhm.
and again, I think now. So I had a mask. No, there were no masks. That's what it was. So now we both have
Mhm.
masks.
Mhm.
So I call in my first client to come in, and then I think her name was Taylor. And I said,
Mhm.
Taylor, hi, I'm Mike. Nice to meet you. Come on down. She's like,
Mhm.
we've met. I'm like, we have. She goes, I just made you your Americano.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh my goodness.
Mhm.
So we had this
Mhm.
connection,
Mhm.
and she was so thankful at like
Mhm.
just the praise I gave her. I
Mm-hmm.
was so thankful for the experience
Mm-hmm.
she gave me.
Mm-hmm.
She became a loyal client of mine. We
Mm-hmm.
became friendly. She's the
Mm-hmm.
sweetest person. We were both born in May. We had that
Mm-hmm.
connection. So I made a friend for
Mm-hmm.
life, right?
Right.
And it was just weird how the universe
Mm-hmm.
put her in my
Mm-hmm.
office right after I made
Mm-hmm.
her day by just
Mm-hmm.
giving a simple
Right.
compliment. It
Right.
was really cool. It was a nice
You know,
experience.
and you've said it several times, that cost nothing.
Zero.
Yeah, but it meant the world. It's kind of like the commercial, right? It was priceless.
Right.
And I think it's tricky because we get so caught up in what we're doing, and that we're focused on it. I've got this email that I've got to do. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. And so you might go, yeah, when somebody comes in, if you even do that, but or we we get so inward thinking. Maybe we go to a networking event and we're thinking about the next 5 things that we've got to do, the one bad thing that happened that morning, all of those. And so people come up and you're like, yeah, I'm Deb Creer, I do, and we're, and we miss those golden opportunities to start those relationships.
Right. Right. Because we're so transactional
Mm-hmm.
and in our heads too much, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know, and I
Right.
think it goes back to like we talked about, like that human connection
Mm-hmm.
and um, just being present and being able
Mm-hmm.
to make someone's
Mm-hmm.
day
Mm-hmm.
is huge,
Right.
right? And
Right.
yeah, when you like go to events like that, some people are really overwhelmed,
Mm-hmm.
like with, oh, I got to meet people and
Right.
shake hands.
Mm-hmm.
What do I say? And
Mm-hmm.
I get into this. I don't get nervous. I don't mind talking to people, especially on stages. I do lots of
Mm-hmm.
public speaking. I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually more comfortable on a stage in front of 1,000 people than I am one-on-one with someone. It's
Mm-hmm.
really weird. But I always forget someone's name.
Mm-hmm.
To this day, even if
Mm-hmm.
I'm like when people come in to be interviewed with
Mm-hmm.
me, I'm in the position of power. I'm behind the
Mm-hmm.
desk interviewing you.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I don't have their resume in front of me, like I'll greet them, like, hey, Bob, was nice to
Mm-hmm.
meet you. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, what was his name again?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Oh,
just
I'm like that. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Even when I repeat it back, no.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
I try all the tricks. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately, in our business, like we see people repeatedly, like you talked about, they're coming
Mm-hmm.
back in a couple times a week, and then
Mm-hmm.
typically our clients, when they came, they found the value, they
Mm-hmm.
became clients for life. So I
Mm-hmm.
knew them over years and
Mm-hmm.
years and
Mm-hmm.
years. So I didn't forget their name as
Mm-hmm.
much. But every once in a while, 'cause we joked beforehand, like Rhode
Mm-hmm.
Island's really small.
Mm-hmm.
When you run a business for 20 years, you know half of the state of
Mm-hmm.
Rhode Island.
Right.
No
Mm-hmm.
matter what restaurant I was in,
Mm-hmm.
the supermarket,
Mm-hmm.
whatever store,
Mm-hmm.
I would always run into
Mm-hmm.
a patient. And sometimes I'd still forget their name, but I never forget their injury.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, how's the right
Yeah.
shoulder tendonitis doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
forget your name, but I
Mm-hmm.
remember I worked on your
Mm-hmm.
shoulder.
But you remembered them. That
Yes.
was the important thing.
Yes.
And they probably never even caught that you didn't call them by their name.
No, no. And if I remembered it, I absolutely
Mm-hmm.
said it because people
Mm-hmm.
do want to hear their
Mm-hmm.
name. And when I didn't, sometimes I would just flat out admit, like, I
Mm-hmm.
remember it was your foot. I remember you
Mm-hmm.
went to this school. Like, what was your name again?
Mm-hmm.
And people understood because, I
Mm-hmm.
saw thousands of
Oh
people
yeah.
a year.
Mm-hmm.
So it was hard to
Right.
remember everyone.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. My husband and I have a thing because he knows I forget names. So if we go up to somebody and I don't immediately say, Tom, this is Michael. Michael, this is Tom. He knows I don't remember.
Right.
And so then he'll introduce himself,
We
and
have the exact same
mhm,
thing with my
yeah.
wife. My wife remembers everyone's name, but if,
Mhm,
if I don't introduce her right away,
mhm, yeah.
she'll like, oh, Mike, you're being rude. I'm
Mhm,
Carla, like blah blah blah.
mhm, mhm,
We have
yeah.
that trick as
Yeah.
well.
Mhm, yeah. Yeah. What would we do without our spouses, right?
Right, right.
I know, I know. You mentioned something earlier, and I want to follow up on this because it's a challenge sometimes when we are working with people because they have egos, they're in pain, all of those various things. They have whatever's going on. You've worked with Olympians. What's it like to work with those egos?
So, I don't know if you're gonna expect this answer.
You
They
like
don't,
them.
they don't have egos.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just the type of athlete that I
Mm-hmm.
dealt with. I've
Mm-hmm.
worked with professional baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had the opportunity to work with a professional football player.
Mm-hmm.
There were some egos there.
Mm-hmm.
But distance runners,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's because it's a solo
Mm-hmm.
sport. It's like if you don't run well, you can't blame the quarterback, you
Right.
can't blame someone else.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have egos.
Mm-hmm.
They were the sweetest.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the fortunate opportunity of working with world record holders,
Mm-hmm.
top 5 in the world. Right now,
Mm-hmm.
I've had probably 2 of the top 5 fastest women in the
Mm-hmm.
history of the United States,
Mm-hmm.
my clients.
Mm-hmm.
They had all the right to have an ego. They
Mm-hmm.
had the resume behind them,
Mm-hmm.
and they were the sweetest, shyest human beings. They appreciated what me
Mm-hmm.
and my staff did. They
Mm-hmm.
showed gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
They had conversations with people and never once like acted like, oh, I'm going to go to the bathroom. They were the sweetest, shyest human beings. They were the sweetest, shyest human beings. They had conversations with people and
Mm-hmm.
never once like acted like, a professional athlete.
Yeah. I'm a gold medalist.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is again, this goes along with having the best patients in the world. I think that just it's part of the mindset and the wiring of this type of
Mm-hmm.
athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have too many big, I
Mm-hmm.
had bigger egos more in like
Mm-hmm.
the high school boys,
Right. Oh
you
yeah, the
know?
quarterback. Mm-hmm.
Right. Or some of the
Mm-hmm.
college kids, like
Mm-hmm.
college athletes,
Mm-hmm.
but these pros, they were great. I remember there
Mm-hmm.
was this one girl I was working with, and in our waiting room, we had the table with magazines. This was pre-COVID when people had magazines in
Mm-hmm.
waiting rooms, right?
You could touch those things. Mm-hmm.
Right. And she was on the cover of three of the magazines
Mm-hmm.
that I had. Of course, we had a lot of running magazines. And
Mm-hmm.
she's sitting on the cover. And
Mm-hmm.
she's sitting in the waiting room
Mm-hmm.
waiting for me, and we had
Mm-hmm.
another patient. So the other patient was just a normal,
Mm-hmm.
regular, probably 50-year-old
Mm-hmm.
woman, runner, but like
Mm-hmm.
probably trying to lose weight, just an average
Mm-hmm.
person.
Right.
And she's like, "Oh, you look like a runner. Do you run?" And this woman was like, "Yeah, I run." And then they
Mm-hmm.
just started talking, and
Mm-hmm.
she was asking the professional athlete
Mm-hmm.
was asking more questions of the woman than the woman
Mm-hmm.
was asking of her, and
Mm-hmm.
the other woman never knew who this person was.
And she didn't go, that's me.
No, and she very
Mm-hmm.
well could have been. Oh, she could say, "Yeah, I'm a professional. I run for
Mm-hmm.
Saucony. I've been to two Olympics. Blah blah
Mm-hmm.
blah." She could have done all those
Mm-hmm.
things. So then I worked with my client, and this woman was here for a longer session with
Mm-hmm.
one of my therapists. And I grabbed the three magazines after my client left, and I
Mm-hmm.
went in, and I forgot her name. We're going to call her Deb. I'm like, "Hey, Deb,
Mm-hmm.
so you met my client Molly
Mm-hmm.
in the waiting room? Yeah, yeah, she was so sweet, blah, blah, blah." I'm like, "This is her." And I showed her the three magazines. She's like,
Mm-hmm.
"That was the
Really? Mm-hmm.
Molly?" Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
And like, she never knew. And I
Mm-hmm.
have 25 stories
Mm-hmm.
like that of my
Mm-hmm.
these runners come in and
Right.
they don't talk about
Mm-hmm.
themselves.
No.
One of the guys was
Mm-hmm.
one of the fastest men in Europe at the
Mm-hmm.
time I was working with him. And there was right on the table near my again a normal
Mm-hmm.
human mortal
Mm-hmm.
patient, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking, and the woman was like, "I'm so impressed. Like, I can't believe you can
Mm-hmm.
run a mile in 3 minutes and
Mm-hmm.
48 seconds, whatever it was." Like,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, he literally said this. He goes, "You're impressed with me?" He's like, "You can run for 5 hours straight," because
Mm-hmm.
she was like a 5 hour marathoner,
Mm-hmm.
which is not
Mm-hmm.
fast.
Right.
And like he literally flipped the
Mm-hmm.
script, and he's like,
Mm-hmm.
you're the
Mm-hmm.
superstar. Like
Mm-hmm.
you impress me." He goes, "I run
Mm-hmm.
fast because I can't do what you do."
Mm-hmm.
It was like almost tear
Mm-hmm.
jerking, like the
Mm-hmm.
conversation this guy had, and just lifted this
Mm-hmm.
woman up
Right.
when all she wanted to do was
Mm-hmm.
show him how in
Mm-hmm.
awe she was of
Mm-hmm.
him. And I have so many of those stories.
Mm-hmm.
So thank goodness there were no egos.
Mm-hmm.
They were just great humans.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the other ego that often gets in the way is the ego that it's my business.
Yeah.
I'm the king. I'm the queen. You will do it my way.
Right.
How do you get around that? Because you mentioned that you had absolutely fabulous staff. How, but that doesn't just happen. How did you get around, not being the I'm in charge? Now, that said, there are times where the buck stops here,
Right.
right? I
Right.
am the boss,
Right.
but how do you really have that teamwork type of staff?
So one thing I had to do was get my ego out of the way
Mm-hmm.
and realize that my business was not all about me.
Mm-hmm.
I could have made it all about me,
Right.
but then, like
Mm-hmm.
we talked earlier, I never would have been able to
Mm-hmm.
lessen my clinical caseload
Mm-hmm.
or build a team.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that came from my wife's observation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and
Back to
thank
those
God,
spouses. Mm-hmm.
right, and thank God. And she's very observant
Mm-hmm.
and is big on connection.
Mm-hmm.
And she would made me aware. She's like, you're making that all about you. And again, seeing all these Olympic athletes, and I was
Mm-hmm.
being asked to present all over the country and
Mm-hmm.
talk on big stages, and I was in the newspaper, on the
Mm-hmm.
local news, all these things. So my head was just like,
That's good ego. Yeah.
it was
Mm-hmm.
filling my young male
Mm-hmm.
ego. But as soon as I realized, and I used the line, I said, your business will succeed when the owner realizes it's not about them, but
Mm-hmm.
it's all about them.
Right.
Meaning, like you set the tone, you
Mm-hmm.
set the
Mm-hmm.
energy. But when I started like letting go of the ego and
Mm-hmm.
empowering my staff
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that they're good and they have the
Mm-hmm.
best interests of the
Mm-hmm.
business in mind, and I
Right.
don't have to be
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
micromanaging, and I don't have to be the man all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I kind of let that go, that was scary at
Mm-hmm.
first because
Right.
I wanted control. I'm a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of a control freak. I'm a
It's
Taurus.
your business.
My business.
Mm-hmm.
But when I can empower people, and I knew they knew the mission, they knew the
Mm-hmm.
vision, they knew what our core values
Mm-hmm.
were, because we reinstated that
Mm-hmm.
every staff meeting. We
Mm-hmm.
have it printed on the wall so
Mm-hmm.
our staff could see it as well. So when the people in the business
Mm-hmm.
that get it, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
ones that didn't didn't
They
work
didn't
out. Either,
last. Hmm.
yeah, either I had to let them
Hmm.
go or they just
Hmm.
felt the energy like
Hmm.
they just weren't comfortable, which was fine.
Hmm.
So realizing that people have the best interest of the business in
Hmm.
mind, empowering them, realizing
Hmm.
I didn't have all the answers,
Hmm.
and trying to surround myself and hire
Hmm.
people who are smarter than I was
Hmm.
is how I think I got out of my own way, and that's when the
Hmm.
business really started to
Hmm.
succeed.
Right. I had a guest on years ago, and I don't remember his name. And he said he knew his business was successful when he went on vacation and didn't get a single call. Now, that's nerve wracking, right? Because, and he said, but yeah, he knew then that he had the best people working for him.
It's such a good
And
feeling.
yeah,
I've had
yeah.
that same feeling. It's
Hmm.
so great.
Hmm. Right. And it is hard. I lead a big volunteer organization, and I'm very type A. And
Hmm.
and I was complaining to one of the people about it was taking a lot of time and yada yada yada. And she said, I'm going to give you a word and you need to pay attention to this word. And I was like, "Mm." And she said, delegate. And and I thought about that, and it was interesting. And so I've really made an effort. And it's funny because some of the times it's like it takes me longer to explain to someone what I want them to do than to do it myself. But to see them do it is great. But it's also been a challenge because I had trained them that even if I told them to go do it, I was still in charge. And so they still needed to run it past me. And when and I would keep telling them, no, I picked you to do this because you are good at it. Keep me in the loop when you need to, but I trust you. And it took a while to kind of get them out of the habit of, no, you're really in charge and I'm just giving you the
Right.
information. But it's
And those three
been,
words that you said to them, I
yeah,
trust
I
you,
trust you. Yeah.
huge
Yeah.
for them,
You
right?
know, I had people during COVID that when everybody, was no longer under their thumbs, the poor micromanagers, their little heads just went right.
Right.
And but they said we don't trust that they're getting their work done. And I said, I mean, it's pretty easy to know whether they were or not, but I said, did you trust them in the office? And if they said yes, I said, well, then why don't you trust them now? And if they said no, I said, well, then you got a different problem. If you didn't trust them when they were right there, then they
Right.
shouldn't be there. Or, maybe you were the issue or whatever. And so, but yeah, that trust, and it's hard, especially when it's your business, your baby, your vision, all of those things. It is hard, but yeah, we've got good people, and that's the important thing.
Right. There are a lot of smart people out there.
Mhm.
There
And
are a
and
lot
a
of good
lot of
people.
them are smarter than me.
Yes. No, I'm not saying yes because you're not smart. I'm just saying yes, there are a lot. Same here.
Mhm.
And I got the advice early on, like
Mhm.
surround yourself with people smarter than you.
Mhm. Right.
And I
Mhm.
try to do that. And that's not
Mhm.
hard for me.
Me
Everyone I
too.
walk by.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. I'm like, okay. It's funny on a side note, I'm embracing AI. Speaking of, something
Oh,
that's
yes.
smarter, it's trying to see, how that's going to work. But yeah, it is all about that. But, one of the things that you also work with people on is exactly what you did, building a business and then exiting it,
Right.
which is a hard thing for people to do. So, and for some they can't. I mean, they literally are the business.
Right.
But when you have something that can be sold, that can be, taken over by by whatever. So how do you work with people to really have them prepare for that? And then what's next?
Right.
It's kind of like the what happens when you retire thing.
Right. So, oh, there's so many ways to answer this question. I'm going to answer by starting. I was interviewed on another podcast, and this podcast was basically all about exiting. It was
Mm-hmm,
called Dreamcatchers.
mm-hmm,
It was a great interview. And I think this guy coined the term of the exiter's paradox.
mm-hmm,
And during the interview, he's like, "All right." So I told my story. He's like, "Great, you sold, you
mm-hmm,
had this liquidity event, you saw the wire hit the bank, and
mm-hmm,
everything was great, right?" And I was like, "No, it
mm-hmm,
wasn't." Because it's yes, I solved one problem where
mm-hmm,
I had a bigger bank account,
mm-hmm.
but I lost my second family.
Right.
I lost the four other
Mm-hmm,
homes that I had built, right,
mm-hmm,
or was building at
mm-hmm,
that time. Like my purpose, like I
mm-hmm.
went through a really emotional
Right.
time, and I
Mm-hmm,
realized through just talking to more and more people
Mm-hmm.
that it's very common.
Mm-hmm.
And I was lost for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whoa, because I mean, although I was not as involved as for generating the revenue of the business,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't the business.
Mm-hmm.
The business was part of my life. And at that
Mm-hmm.
point, I had already started to break away a little
Mm-hmm.
bit to try to make myself um, not so important with the
Mm-hmm.
business.
Right.
But then, yeah, I remember walking into the office the day after I sold it, and it just felt different.
Right. It was not yours.
I had literally, like, I'm like, all right, I got the key. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
open this door,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not mine.
Right. They
You
could
know,
change the lock.
right. But, and even the energy and,
Mm-hmm.
because it was an emotional experience
Mm-hmm.
for our staff because
Mm-hmm.
they didn't see this coming, although like
Right.
we
And
gave
they
them
loved
time.
you.
They did, and now I'm so honored
Mm-hmm.
and flattered, and I feel great about what we had built and the experience they
Mm-hmm.
had. Unfortunately, a lot of them left because they weren't getting that same experience,
Mm-hmm.
which is very common, when a
Mm-hmm.
bigger company
Right.
comes in. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was hard and it was
Mm-hmm.
different. So I talk to people now, like when we're planning for exit, and I tell people, even some of the new startups that I'm
Mm-hmm.
working with, I'm like, like how do you foresee yourself exiting? What's your
Mm-hmm.
5, 10, 15, 20-year
Mm-hmm.
goal? Like, I don't even think about that yet. I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
we need to start, not right now,
Mm-hmm.
but something you need to think about because every
Mm-hmm.
decision you make can get you closer or further
Mm-hmm.
away from what you want to do. And
Mm-hmm.
then we got people closer to the exit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, how do you foresee yourself exiting
Mm-hmm.
your practice? What do you want to see? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
legacy do you want to leave? Like, do you want this practice to go
Mm-hmm.
on when you're not there? Do you want to just get a big check and unload
Mm-hmm.
it and not care? Do you want to
Mm-hmm.
continue to be part of it and
Mm-hmm.
get mailbox money in and
Mm-hmm.
still oversee? Or what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really know what I was going to
Mm-hmm.
do. So when that little time when I became the handyman in my house, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
what am I going to do? Like,
Mm-hmm. Right. You'd done
so
that for 20 years.
right. That's a long time. Yeah, it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
And my family saw it too. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
um, even when I was with the other company, I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
extremely happy. Again, nothing to
Mm-hmm.
do with they were doing. They were trying to do
Right.
great
But
things, and
you weren't in charge anymore. I
I
mean, that's
wasn't in
the
charge.
thing. Mm-hmm.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
it was so different. And it
Mm-hmm.
was like I was almost angry at myself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why you just get it together? Like
Mm-hmm.
you got a big bank account now.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything's fine. Like
Mm-hmm.
just move on. Couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
Well,
thought,
in a lot of ways, it's like a divorce, a death,
yes.
and all of those things. And especially because whether it's a year, 20 years, you put your life's blood into that business.
Yeah.
And it was great that somebody wanted it. It's kind of like raising a child, right? You raise them and away they go. And you're like, okay, now
Now
what?
what?
Now kids
Right.
come back.
Right.
But yeah, it's and so do you think that a lot of people put it off because when they should do it because they don't know that what's next question?
I think so. I think, and they might not even be able to articulate that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like more on the emotional side of
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, of it all. And I think sadly what happens too sometimes is there's they're emotionally or physically or mentally or energy wise starting to check out of the business
Mm-hmm.
already, and we see the business declining.
Mm-hmm.
So if they would have put some thought into
Mm-hmm.
this, and when the business was doing well and
Right.
strategized,
Mm-hmm.
they could have gotten more
Mm-hmm.
money for the business or
Mm-hmm.
come up with a better plan
Mm-hmm.
where they could exit and leave it to a key
Mm-hmm.
employee, or there's so many strategies
Mm-hmm.
that they could have used. And we just see that starting to tank because they're
Mm-hmm.
starting to tank,
Mm-hmm.
and now they don't have a business to sell.
Right.
So all
Mm-hmm.
their life's work, hopefully they put away
Mm-hmm.
enough money and they got enough
Mm-hmm.
value out of it. And some people are okay, like, I'm just going to shut
Mm-hmm.
the doors. I'm
Mm-hmm.
fine.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. But that's not most of the people. I've seen
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people like try to sell a business that's
Mm-hmm.
all about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you don't have a business to sell. You have a job
Mm-hmm.
that you want someone to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
like having those
Mm-hmm.
conversations is hard because
Mm-hmm.
they're expecting to get
Mm-hmm.
well, I should at least be able to get 150,
Mm-hmm.
$200,000 for this because that's how much I generate. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but you generated it.
Right. Yeah.
Like, do you want to keep generating it
Mm-hmm.
for someone else now?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And of course, everybody always values their business at more.
Of
And a
course.
big part of that is the intellectual value and things like that. But yeah, because I've talked with people on the program before about selling their business. And they said, of course, the worst is when they're selling a business after someone has passed away.
Oh,
Because,
yeah.
they were told, husband told wife, hey, this business is worth $2 million. They value it at 100,000.
Right.
And a big, and there's a variety of things for that. But yeah, I mean, it's just plan for that. Even if your plan is when it's done, it's done. Okay.
Right.
How do you close the bank accounts? How do you notify the clients? All of those things.
Right. And like, how do you take care of the clients after you close the door?
Right.
Are you sending them all to another referral source? Right. And yeah, it's funny because going through the whole process of selling a business, like I'm emotionally attached to this business. Like I've literally slept in my offices because I was working so late at nights, and I'm just like, these treatment tables are comfortable. I'm just going to sleep here.
Why am I going to go home and come back?
Right. But like, so everyone always thinks it's worth more because of the emotional capital put in, right?
Right.
And then the people who are buying a business, they want to pay as little as they can for it.
Right.
It's the business transaction, right? And then if they start saying it's not worth this or well, because of this, and then if you
they just called your baby ugly.
Yeah, that's right. So true. Don't you dare call my baby ugly. But like there's an emotional toll. And one thing I'm trying to do is like get people ready for that emotional side.
Right.
Having a good team, whether it's, you're an M&A advisor, your lawyer, your accountant, or coach like myself, helping you navigate that so you don't like make emotional decisions to destroy like what your plan was post sale. Because I almost told the purchaser to go take a
I can't do it.
Yeah, I'm like, no, you can't do this. And I was just so frustrated, but that's part of the process. Like due diligence is tough.
Right. Oh yeah.
They uncover like you just feel like you're standing naked in a room and they're all pointing and making fun of you. Like, right. But that's
you
their
did
job.
that.
Right. Like why would you do this? And well, I didn't know this. So now this, like it's hard, but it's all part of the process.
Right.
And I had a great experience. The people who bought mine were great, but they were trying to pay as little for the business. I was trying to get as much as I can. And they were trying to find ways to lessen the value of it so they didn't have to pay for it. Right. But it's part of the process. And getting ready emotionally is key, because it is an emotional roller coaster doing it.
I love it. Well, oh my gosh, Michael, we are at the top of the hour and so much more to talk about. I know. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
So for people who are saying, Michael, I need to talk to you, how do they find you?
Best way to find me is through my website. So it's michaeljsilva.com. And it's Silva, Silva. I know I'm from the New England area, so it's not Silver, and I just forgot how to say the R.
Silva.
Silva. So michaeljsilva.com. My email is info@michaeljsilva.com. I'm not huge on social media, but I am on LinkedIn under Michael J. Silva. You can find my page for the consulting or my personal page. Yeah, that's how you can get a hold of me.
I love it. And there it describes the services. And, the thing we didn't even really talk about is you give presentations. I mean, you briefly mentioned that. So, give us just, at 30 seconds, what type of presentations do you do?
So my talks originally started mostly in the running world. That's how my public speaking started. And I do things on self-care. And I'm starting now to get into the business side of things. So I've done some talks through our national organization on building the customer experience, finding ways to become more profitable in a declining reimbursing healthcare type of state. All my clients are in the healthcare space. Right. But I do feel like I can bring value to any small business in that way in building the customer experience. But I do talks on all those topics.
Great.
Virtual and live.
I love it. Yeah. Well, we have been having so much fun. And like I said, we need to have you on again because there are things that we didn't even talk about. So we need to do that. But until that, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Flashing back to the 59 minutes of talking we just did. Don't let your ego get in the way. Empower the people around you. Surround yourself with smart, passionate people. Get your own ego out of the way, and the business will succeed exponentially over you trying to do everything and thinking it's all about you and that you're that important.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having such fun talking with Michael Silva. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.